And I have done this before. I've actually gone to Vass, say, Vass, what do you think about this? Like, I'll just go to him and say, what do you think about this? Because I know he went down the rabbit hole. So I'll literally come say, I know he went down the rabbit. Let me ask him. And he tells me, okay, I got it now. Thanks. Right? Don't I want to have some people I can call?
Yeah, ideally, yes, definitely. I mean, because that certainly takes the impetus away and helps you protect your treasured resources, your time and your energy and all these things, right? I mean, then you don't have to sink as much. But we've seen, I think the thing we need to guard against is blind faith into someone that just trusting for the sake of trusting because it's easier.
Well, let me ask Mike. I got a question for you. You've worked for Merck, Schering-Plough. You're a virologist. So when we first started seeing data come out, and we initially heard from the WHO in Europe, their head, come out and say, okay, this approach isn't the best case. This is the last case, worst, and that morphed somehow in the United States into that this is our first and only option. And I think that's because of politics. Did you see that and say, oh, well, it makes sense because it's science? Or did you turn around and say, well, that's political?
I think there's two answers there. I think I saw a lot of my colleagues, my fellow lab mates and stuff that accepted that because they believed that they could trust that as science, as that the science backed that up. I didn't view it that way. I thought that it flew right in the face of what the science said. I mean, none of those things really made sense.
Some masks do seem to work, that mask actually could help. That's what I heard. I think Alex heard that too. Is this not true?
Well, those masks, in order to be effective, they have to be fit. So they have to be specially fit. You can't have facial hair. They have to securely fit, and they can't have any kind of some of them have like those respirator things on the front. So I mean, basically, they have to seal such that there's almost no way you could wear them for an extended amount of time and have enough oxygen to breathe.
Not everyone has Mike, a virologist, on their speed dial to be able to get the answer from him. So what we need to do going forward is skepticism is a good thing. It's part of science. If I'm wrong about this, Mike, please correct me. But science is the eternal quest for a question. We should be asking questions. We shouldn't have blind obedience. That's why we said the world isn't flat. Copernicus was punished for that. He turned out to be right. Well, guess what? We were told the jab was perfectly fine and masks would make you safe. And it turns out that's not correct. Why? Because we kept asking questions. That's one of the most important things we can do in any crisis. Keep asking questions, get better answers, ask a better question.
Well,
Am I wrong, Mike?
Who can we trust? Can we trust them? Do we believe anything they tell us? I think the first question is why should we trust them going forward? Like, where do they have any shred of our trust left after that? I mean, what? And if we answer to that we shouldn't trust them, then we've already closed that door, and then we have to turn elsewhere and ask, okay, who can we trust?
Mike, isn't the scientific approach the best one? And I'm talking about not climate, let's throw out the climatologists, because they are a compromised group. They've been wrong since 1958, and they're still running with the same premise, which is not scientific theory. If your theorem does not work based on empirical data, you create a new theory. Climatologists don't do that. They go with the same theory and just say, well, you just need to wait longer. Einstein, another great example. On the extreme, someone who comes out of left field or right field, however you want to word it, and has this brand new theorem, and then when we test it, it's true. Isn't that the best way, Mike? Shouldn't we be doing more of that without the politics, without censoring people like we used to do back in the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages? Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, science at its heart, science is about asking questions. And once it gets politicized, once it becomes something that you can't question, that you must accept, I mean, it's become dogma. I'm not a climate scientist. I like to kind of stay in my lane, but I think, we've just talked about with respect to COVID and how all of that was the data and everything was so badly misrepresented by those in power. I think the climate situation is an even clearer example of how they've really badly, intentionally, maybe misrepresented the data. The theories have been disproven.
And it seems like policy is pushing us more and more into compliance rather than actually helping us with the crisis they claim is going on. Is that a fair thought?
One of the things that bothered me the most throughout all of that was the way in which scientists like myself and doctors lorded their expertise over people and said that, because you don't have a certain credentials or degree or whatever, that you not only can you not understand this, but you're not even allowed to enter into the discussion.
Right.
And I was like, whoa. There's a huge difference between being in the lab, like I was, having 20 years of experience in the trenches, and just being able to be conversant in this. And plus, if you have a stake in this, which we all clearly do, how do you not have a say?
No, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. But I can read a scientific report. I can read a doctor's analysis, a critical or clinical analysis, because I understand English. And I can look at the data and maybe even pull out a thesaurus, a dictionary for the words I don't know. And I can understand and make at least a layman's, a well-educated decision based on the data. Isn't that the way science is supposed to work? Or am I wrong on that? Am I wrong, Mike? This is why they make peer-reviewed papers, right?
Right. I mean, the information is absolutely out there for people to obtain if they so desire, and if they're willing to put the time into it, if you're willing to turn off the TV and actually invest the time in it. And I'll be the first to tell you that, I mean, like, I don't expect that anybody's going to be able to figure out how to go in the lab and run experiments and do things at that level. But I mean, to be able to just get enough of an understanding to take away the important things and actually look at it and say, do I believe this? Does this make sense? Does this add up? Do I, absolutely. And anybody can learn. I mean,
as a scientist, you have to be accountable for the methods and the methodology that you use, the theorem that you create, and the experiment that you put out there. And that's what gets peer reviewed. And if I'm correct on this, Mike, and this is my understanding of it, if that's correct, does it make sense that we use that same idea on an individual basis? That I am accountable for what I think, how I am acting in my community, what I am offering to that community, and therefore the community, my peer review, can tell me, well, perhaps we could better use those resources, that energy, that intensity into this area versus that area. Doesn't that make sense, Mike? Or is it not tracking correctly? Am I not conveying it right?
No, I think absolutely. I mean, it's whether you're talking about science or lots of other things. I mean, and exactly what you said, it's accountability is one of the most important things. And except for the fact that nobody wants to be accountable for anything nowadays. But unfortunately, and I think, Michael, you pointed this out before, the great majority of people are either entirely indifferent or are bystanders. They don't want to take the risks to get involved. So it winds up being very small, kind of minority fringe, groups that are activists that are willing to take action, so to speak. And the great majority of people they're the ones that make up these communities. They just are more content to sit on the sidelines and because
don't make Vass right. Don't do that.
Well, in this case, he is, I think.
I'm clipping that. Go on.
We need to go from this perspective of blind faith entirely into government, into experts, into scientists and doctors in white coats, and giving our entire our full allegiance to them. And say,
if I'm wrong and I don't know what I'm talking about, fantastic. You got extra food, donate it to a homeless shelter, donate it to someone in your neighborhood, a soup kitchen that have increased 25% in America. If I'm right, your family is fed, you saved yourself a bunch of money. Mike, is that the scientific method, or am I wrong?
Well, it's just smart common sense based on what we've seen in terms of
You're
prices
making him right again. I'm
rising.
never bringing you back.
Well, I have.
Damn.
Well, let me ask one other question, Mike, because that brings up something else I think a lot of people want to ask. In the scientific community, to your knowledge, without naming names or anything like that, we know that certain terms over the last 2.5 years have had their definitions changed, especially in science. One of them being, what is the definition of a vaccine? And there has been a change in what that definition is. Is the scientific community comfortable with that, or are they pissed off about that?
From what I can tell, they seem to be pretty indifferent about it. But again, it's it's driven by profits